She cheated on me with my best friend, and now they're trying to steal my $250, $0 inheritance. Didn't expect their betrayal to turn into a legal battle over our family estate. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife, Emily, would betray me so blatantly. And honestly, I never imagined it would come out like this. Her cheating on me with my best friend, Jake, and then trying to steal my inheritance right out from under me. It's like a bad movie, only this is real life and I'm stuck dealing with the fallout. We'd been together for nearly 10 years. I thought we had a good marriage, sure, there were the usual ups and downs, but I believed in us. Emily was beautiful, smart, and charming, and she knew how to make me feel like I was the only guy in the world. We had a nice house, a couple of cars, and I was about to inherit a sizable estate from my grandfather, around $250, $0, which I kept under wraps. I was saving it for a future plan, maybe a business or just to secure our life. Lately, though, I started noticing little things. Emily's phone would buzz more often and she'd hide it quickly when I came near. She'd also start working late more frequently, claiming she had extra projects at her job. I didn't think much of it at first. Women do work late sometimes, right? But I caught her in lies. She'd say she was at the office, but then I'd find her on social media chatting with someone named Jake late into the night. I'd see her laughing at messages, flirting maybe. I couldn't tell, but it didn't sit right. One day I decided to check her phone while she was in the shower. I know that sounds invasive, but I was desperate for answers. I found texts that made my stomach turn. Flirty, suggestive messages from Jake. Things like "can't wait to see you tonight," and "you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." I also found pictures, nothing explicit at first, just some selfies, but then I saw a few that were definitely not innocent. Her in a hotel room, half dressed, with Jake's arm around her. That was the moment I knew. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with my best friend. I felt like the ground shifted beneath my feet. I didn't want to believe it at first. I thought maybe I was overreacting, that it was some kind of joke or misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew the truth. The betrayal was real and it cut deep. I confronted her that night. I told her I knew about the messages, about Jake. Her face twisted into this bitchy sneer and she started lying right away. Said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that she loved me and wouldn't do anything to hurt me. But I had proof. I showed her the messages, the photos, and her face went pale for a second. Then she snapped back with some crazy excuses, saying Jake was just a friend, that I was overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure. That moment was a punch to the gut. Seeing her lie so effortlessly, trying to gaslight me, made me furious. I'd always trusted her, always believed in our marriage. Now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, dishonest woman who was willing to throw everything away for a quick fling. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. I thought about all the times she'd said she loved me, how she'd look into my eyes and lie with such conviction. I wondered how long this had been going on, how many nights she'd spent with Jake, pretending to be faithful while she was out there screwing my best friend. The emotional toll hit me hard. I was angry at her, yes, but also incredibly hurt. I felt like a fool. I had invested so much into this marriage, into her, and now I was left with nothing but the shards of a broken trust. I didn't want to believe that my wife could do this to me, especially with Jake, someone I'd trusted with my life. It felt like my whole world was collapsing. I stayed up all night, replaying everything, trying to find some way to make sense of it. I was furious, but I also felt defeated. How do you go on when the person you loved the most in this world turns out to be your biggest enemy? In the days that followed, I kept my distance. I didn't confront her again right away. I needed time to think, too. Process what I wanted to do, but I knew one thing: this wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the betrayal of my trust, the betrayal of everything I believed in. And I was starting to realize that Emily wasn't the person I thought she was. She had lied to me repeatedly, and now she and Jake were trying to manipulate the situation in their favor. I could feel it in my gut. They thought I wouldn't find out, that I'd just accept it and move on. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. After that night, everything changed. I started noticing how Emily was acting even more bitchy and defensive. She would throw fits over the smallest things, accuse me of spying on her, and deny everything. She kept insisting that I was paranoid, that Jake was just a friend, and that I was overreacting because I was insecure. It was honestly ridiculous how she kept spinning lies, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. Meanwhile, Jake was nowhere to be found. I tried reaching out to him, but he was ghosting me completely. I knew what was happening. These two were probably planning their next move. I had to be careful. I decided I needed more concrete proof, something undeniable, before I did anything drastic. I started digging deeper into their messages, looking for any sign of what their plans were, or if they'd crossed any lines I couldn't ignore. That's when I found out about the inheritance. I'd been keeping it quiet, but my grandfather had left me a trust worth $250, $0. I'd been planning to use that money to start a business, maybe buy a house, or just secure my future. But Emily, I realized, was scheming to get her hands on that money. She'd been subtly pushing me to sign some papers, claiming it was for a joint account or some kind of investment. I was suspicious from the start, but I didn't think she'd try to steal my inheritance. Then I stumbled across a text message from Jake, an exchange where they were talking about getting rid of me so they could split the estate. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe they were this calculated, this ruthless. They weren't just screwing around, they were planning a full-blown scam. That's when I knew I had to act fast. If they succeeded, I'd lose everything. My money, my future, maybe even my reputation if the story got out. I kept quiet for a few days, trying to figure out my next move. I didn't want to confront them blindly. I needed leverage, evidence, something that would turn the tables. I also started talking to a lawyer, someone I could trust, someone who knew about estate laws and could help me protect my inheritance. I didn't tell Emily I was doing this. I knew she'd try to sabotage me, maybe even destroy the evidence or spin a story that I was the crazy one. One afternoon, I decided to set a trap. I told Emily I was going to be out of town for a couple of days, on some business trip, and I left my phone at home with some fake messages I'd sent to Jake. I wanted to see if she'd try to contact him or make any moves. Sure enough, the next morning I caught her red-handed. She called Jake, and I overheard her whispering in the other room. She said she was ready to finalize everything, and that they needed to get rid of him if I found out too much. That was the moment I snapped. I realized I'd been played for a fool, and I couldn't let this go on any longer. I decided I'd gather all the evidence I could, confront her with everything, and then take legal action to stop her from stealing my inheritance. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. The betrayal was too deep, and I didn't want her or Jake to get away with it. I started recording their conversations secretly, taking screenshots of their messages and compiling everything I could. I also contacted my lawyer, who advised me on how to protect the estate and how to prepare for a legal battle. I knew it was about to get messy, but I was ready. I'd be damned if I let two people I once loved destroy me and my future. The worst part was the emotional toll. I felt like I'd lost my wife, my best friend, and my sense of security all at once. I was angry, hurt, and disgusted. I kept asking myself how she could do this, how Jake could betray me like that, and how I'd ever trust anyone again. But deep down, I knew I had to be strong. I had to stand up for myself and fight for what's mine. Now, I'm sitting here, waiting for the right moment to confront her with everything I've gathered. I've decided I'm not going to let her walk all over me. This isn't just about money. It's about respect, dignity, and making sure she understands she can't cheat and lie her way into my life and my inheritance. I don't know exactly how it's going to end, but I do know one thing. I'm not going down without a fight. The day I finally decided to confront Emily, I knew I had to be careful. I'd spent days gathering evidence, screenshots of messages, recordings of her talking to Jake, and even some financial documents I managed to sneak away from her. I was ready to lay everything out on the table, but I also knew she'd try to deny, manipulate, or spin her way out of it. I waited until she was alone in the house. She was in her usual bitchy mood, snapping at me over the smallest things, trying to make me feel guilty or insecure. I could see it. In her eyes, she knew I was onto her and it was making her nervous. I sat her down in the living room, played the recordings I had, and showed her the messages. Her face went pale, but she quickly recovered her composure, at least outwardly. She started lying again, claiming the messages were fake, or that I was misinterpreting everything. She even had the audacity to say I was jealous of Jake and that I was paranoid because I didn't trust her. I didn't buy her bullshit. I laid out every piece of evidence I had, explained how I knew about her plans to steal my inheritance, and how she was trying to manipulate me into giving her everything. Her eyes flashed with anger and defiance, and she started yelling at me, calling me crazy, possessive, and paranoid. She claimed I was just jealous because I was insecure, that she loved me and only me, and that I was imagining things. But I knew better. I had her phone records, her own words, and her own actions. That confrontation was the tipping point. I told her she needed to leave. I told her I was going to take legal action to protect my inheritance and to prevent her from stealing from me. She screamed, called me names, and stormed out of the house, but I didn't care. I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief because I finally had her cornered, and rage because I was hurt so badly. Over the next few days, I contacted my lawyer and explained everything. They advised me on how to proceed, filing for a temporary restraining order, freezing the estate accounts, and preparing for a legal showdown. It was a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings, and long nights of thinking about what I'd lost and what I still had to fight for. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my future, and the truth. Meanwhile, Emily was trying to spin her story to everyone around her. She told friends and family that I was controlling, paranoid, and that she was the victim. She painted herself as the wronged wife, the innocent woman who was being unfairly accused. She even tried to manipulate our mutual friends into thinking I was overreacting. But I had all the evidence and I knew the truth. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The legal process moved quickly. My lawyer filed the paperwork to protect the estate and to prevent Emily from accessing any of my money. I also started taking steps to secure my inheritance, changing passwords, moving assets into my name alone, and preparing for what I knew would be a long battle. I wasn't naive enough to think it would be easy. I knew she'd fight dirty, try to discredit me, and do everything possible to keep her hands on my money. But I was determined to see it through. Throughout all of this, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been blindsided, yes, but I also realized I'd been giving her too much power for too long. I trusted her blindly, and that trust was shattered. Now I was learning that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to fight back hard, even if it means tearing everything apart first. I didn't want her to win, and I sure as hell didn't want Jake to walk away with my money. The hardest part was the emotional aftermath. I kept replaying everything. In my mind, the lies, the betrayal, the way she looked at me when I confronted her. But I also knew I had to move forward. I couldn't let her or Jake destroy what I've built. I had to be stronger, smarter, and more cautious. I still loved her, but I knew now that love wasn't enough to fix this mess. It was a wake-up call, and I was determined to come out of it with my head held high. The legal battle kicked off more quickly than I expected. My lawyer managed to get a temporary restraining order against Emily, forbidding her from accessing any of my accounts or the inheritance funds. It was a relief, but I knew it was only the beginning. Emily, true to form, started playing the victim, claiming I was abusing her or trying to control her. She hired her own lawyer, of course, and the fight became more intense than I'd anticipated. What really threw me for a loop was how she tried to turn our mutual friends and even some family members against me. She painted me as the unreasonable husband, the one who was paranoid and jealous. She'd call them, crying, saying I was stalking her, accusing her of cheating when she insisted she was innocent. It was classic manipulation, but it hurt more than I expected. I felt betrayed not only by her but by the people I thought I could trust. Meanwhile, I was working nonstop with my lawyer to gather every piece of evidence I could. I had receipts, text backups, recordings, and even financial documents showing her attempts to divert the inheritance. I also hired a private investigator to verify her movements and her conversations with Jake. The PI confirmed what I already suspected. They'd been planning this for months, plotting how to take my money, and now they were trying to cover their tracks. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. Emily had made a move to transfer some of the estate assets into her own name. That was the last straw. I immediately filed for an injunction to freeze all estate accounts. The feeling of having her try to steal my inheritance made my blood boil. All I'd ever wanted was to build a future, and now I was watching her try to take it from me with lies and deception. That night, I sat alone in my empty house, feeling a strange mixture of anger and sadness. I kept thinking about how she used to be so bitchy, so manipulative, and how she would spin stories to everyone around her. I wondered how I'd let it get this far. I'd been so trusting, so naive. But now I saw her for what she was, a liar and a thief. I realized that I had to be prepared for a long fight, and that meant staying calm, focused, and strategic. I also started planning what I'd say in court. I wanted my truth to come out loud and clear. I had to make sure everyone saw her for what she truly was, someone capable of betrayal, someone who would do anything for money. I knew that once this was over, I'd have a lot of healing to do. I'd lost my wife, my best friend, and my sense of security all at once. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. Not without a fight. The emotional toll was enormous. Every day I woke up feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see this coming. I trusted her with my heart, my future, and now I was left picking up the pieces. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This was a battle I had to win, not just for my money but for my dignity. I had to stand up for myself, even if it meant tearing my life apart to do it. I kept reminding myself that betrayal like this doesn't just hurt the wallet, it crushes the soul. And I wasn't going to let her or Jake destroy me. I'd protect what's mine, even if it meant fighting dirty back. I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I wanted to be the one in control of my future. And I was starting to see that sometimes the only way to do that is to confront the lies head-on, no matter how painful. The court hearings were intense, and I'll admit, I felt like I was fighting a losing battle at first. Emily's lawyer was good, slick, manipulative, and relentless. She kept insisting that Emily was innocent, that I was just paranoid, and she tried to paint me as an obsessive, controlling husband. But I had the evidence, and I made damn sure it was all documented. Every message, every bank record, every piece of proof I could muster. I knew Emily's game. She'd try to spin everything, but I was ready. During the hearings, Emily showed up looking bitchy and defensive, trying to put on a brave face. She denied everything, claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation, that she loved me and didn't want any of this. She even tried to accuse me of domestic abuse, which was laughable, but I could see her desperation. She was losing control, and I think she realized her plans were unraveling. What really changed the course was when my lawyer presented the evidence of her attempt to transfer estate assets into her name, proof that she was actively trying to steal from me. The judge was not amused. She granted an injunction, freezing all assets related to the estate, and ordered Emily to stay away from the house and the accounts. That was a huge win, but I knew it wasn't over yet. Emily was furious, and I could see her plotting her next move. Meanwhile, Jake was still silent. I'd hired the PI to keep tabs on him, and it turned out he'd been meeting with Emily secretly even after I confronted her. They were planning something bigger, I could tell. I also found out that Emily had been secretly trying to open new bank accounts under fake names, trying to bypass the legal restrictions. It was clear she wasn't going down without a fight, and I had to be smarter than her. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting. I'd go from feeling hopeful to completely defeated. Every time I thought I had her cornered, she'd come back with a new lie, a new scheme. But I refused to back down. I'd already come this far, and I wasn't going to let her destroy what I'd worked for. I started talking more openly to friends and family about what was happening, letting them see the truth behind her manipulations. I needed their support, and I knew I couldn't do this alone. One thing I learned during this whole process is how dangerous betrayal is, how someone you trust can turn into your worst enemy in an instant. Emily's bitchy attitude, her constant lies, her manipulative tactics, they all revealed a side of her I never knew. But I also learned that being prepared, staying calm, and having solid evidence can make all the difference. The hardest part now was the waiting. The court date for the final hearing was coming up, and I knew Emily would do everything possible to sway the outcome. She'd try to make me look like the villain, spin her lies, and plead her case. But I was ready. I had my lawyer, my evidence, and a clear mind. I knew that once the judge saw everything, she'd understand the truth, that Emily was a dishonest, manipulative woman trying to steal my inheritance and ruin me. I also started thinking about what comes next. If I win, I'll finally have my inheritance protected and I can move on with my life. But if I lose, I'll have to figure out how to rebuild everything from scratch. Either way, I learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and what it really means to protect yourself from someone willing to do anything for money. I don't regret fighting for what's mine, and I refuse to let her get away with this without facing the consequences. This whole experience has been a brutal lesson in how betrayal can come from the people you trust the most, and how sometimes you have to fight dirty to defend yourself. I'll never forget what I've been through, but I also know I'll come out stronger on the other side. I just hope that anyone reading this who's going through something similar learns to stand up, gather evidence, and never let anyone take away what's rightfully theirs. The final court hearing was more nerve-wracking than I could have imagined. I sat in the courtroom, heart pounding, knowing that everything was riding on this moment. Emily sat across from me, looking furious and defeated, her lawyer whispering last-minute strategies. I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. Finally, this chaos was coming to a head. I had done everything I could to prepare, and I knew I had the truth on my side. When the judge entered, she was no nonsense, and I could tell she wasn't impressed with Emily's attempts to spin her lies. My lawyer laid out all the evidence, screenshots, recordings, financial documents, everything. I saw Emily's face flicker with anger and frustration as the judge reviewed the case. I could tell she was trying to hold herself together, but her bitchy, manipulative persona was cracking under the weight of reality. After a tense hour, the judge finally delivered her verdict. She granted a permanent injunction, freezing all assets related to the estate and appointing a court-appointed trustee to oversee the inheritance until everything was settled. Emily was ordered to stay away from the house, the bank accounts, and any dealings related to the estate. The judge made it clear that any attempt to transfer or hide assets would be met with severe penalties. As I sat there, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I'd protected my inheritance. My future was still intact. Emily's lawyer immediately announced she would appeal, but I knew that the evidence was solid. The judge's decision was final for now. I looked over at Emily, who was seething but knew she'd lost. Her bitchy attitude was replaced with a look of pure fury. I didn't gloat. I just felt a strange sense of closure. In the days that followed, I started cleaning up the mess. I changed all my passwords, moved my assets into safer accounts, and began the process of rebuilding my life. I also cut contact with Emily entirely. She tried calling, texting, even showing up at my house, but I blocked her everywhere. I knew she'd never give up, but I refused to let her manipulate me anymore. The emotional scars weren't easy to heal. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt, but I also felt a strange sense of empowerment. I'd learned that trusting blindly can leave you vulnerable, but being cautious and prepared can help you survive even the worst betrayals. I realized that I'd spent too much time giving her my trust and not enough protecting myself. That lesson was the hardest but most valuable of all. Looking back, I see how far I've come. I started out as a husband blindsided by betrayal, but I ended up with a clearer picture of who I am and what I deserve. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can turn into your enemies, and that the only way to protect yourself is to stay vigilant. I also learned that fighting for what's right is worth every ounce of pain and effort. Now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I've started seeing a counselor to work through the emotional trauma, and I'm planning to move forward with a new perspective. I don't hate Emily, I just feel sorry for her, really. Because at the end of the day, her greed and lies only hurt herself. I'm stronger now, more cautious, and more determined than ever to protect what's mine. What I want anyone reading this to take away is simple. Trust is vital, but trust must be earned and protected. Never let anyone manipulate or betray you without consequences. Keep your eyes open. Gather evidence. Fight for yourself. Because if you don't, someone else will do it for you, and it might be too late. I survived this nightmare, and I'm finally ready to move on, knowing I stood my ground and came out the other side with my dignity intact.